Hey everyone, it's Jack here, TalkNorwichCity, back for another video today. Hope you're all doing very well. Now, back in the pre-season, ahead of this championship campaign, I undertook the devilishly difficult task of trying to predict the 1 to 24 in this championship. Lots to get wrong, and I certainly did that. Lots to get right. I did some of that, and a whole season of chaos that we've seen since then. Looking forward to getting through all of that. Lots of you want to hear my 5 transfer targets for Norwich City this summer. So if this video hits 500 likes, I'll get that done. But until then, let's go through what I was predicting ahead of this season. Now, in 24th place, rock bottom of the championship, I predicted it would be Birmingham. I thought the uncertainty around the football club, the years and years of seeming kind of relegation scraps that they have just somehow found a way to survive was going to come to an end. I thought this was the season that Birmingham went down. It wasn't the case. They survived handsomely in the end. They were 7 places above where I had them. They ended the season in 17th place. And I just thought did a really impressive job, actually. Probably went under the radar. Plenty of people thought that Birmingham were going to go down this season. And I feel like because of the other stories, particularly at the top of the table, Birmingham were one of those sides that were forgotten about. So got that one horribly wrong. Birmingham survived. The other 2 places in the relegation zone I got right, just the wrong way round. So I had Reading in 23rd, they finished 22nd. I had Blackpool in 22nd, they finished in 23rd. I think often in the championship, and not just this season, the bottom end of the table is often a lot easier to predict than the top of the table. And maybe I'm just saying that because that's often the way around I kind of get things. You just sensed with both of those sides going into this season, there was uncertainty around the football club. You looked at the squad, it was thin, it was lacking quality, and I think over the course of the season they were found out. Now, of course, Reading did have that points deduction thrown in there as well, which obviously didn't help things, but I did think that they were going to be the sides, along with Birmingham, of course, survived, were going to really struggle, and they did. They ended up the season 5 points away from their nearest team and were down. Now, in 21st place, I had Rotherham, and I thought they would survive by the skin of their teeth. And in the end, it was a little bit more comfortable for Rotherham. I really, really wanted them to just end this kind of yo-yo between the Championship and League One, almost the Norwich City of the league below. And they have finally done that. It wasn't in the end with Paul Warne. He, of course, departed before the season ended. They finished the season with Jordan Hugill up front. But finally, Rotherham cemented themselves, and hopefully they can go on to become an established championship team now. I love what Rotherham are about. I love the way that they operate. And I'm just so pleased that, yes, I was 2 places out in their prediction, and they were actually finished 19th, but they survived. That's what I was hoping for, and that's what we got. Now, I've spoken about Wigan. I had them in 20th. They ended up going down. Just really disappointed with what I saw from Wigan. Rarely impressed me throughout the whole of the season. I thought they'd have enough to stay up. I think often you get, a degree of momentum, and I know lots of people don't like that word, and it's a bit of a cliche, but when you come up as champions from League One, you'll often cement yourself in the Championship, at least for a season. That wasn't to be for them this time around. Lots of uncertainty towards the end of the season off the pitch. That doesn't help. Went through a whole host of managers, none of them clicked, played contrasting styles throughout the season. There was no consistency with that Wigan side, and I think ultimately that's what let them down. Now, I had Huddersfield to survive. I had them in 19th. They ended the season in 18th. It certainly wasn't plain sailing, and it ended up being Neil Warnock, the man that kept them in the division. A remarkable story for Huddersfield, and fair play to Neil Warnock. It was a really pleasing end to the season for them. They won 3 of their last 5 games. Look, I thought Huddersfield had enough quality to remain in the division, and I think that ended up being the defining factor for them. Of course, they were in a playoff final not so long ago, but did enough. It was one of the remarkable stories of the Championship this season. And to be fair, from 19th downwards so far, I've actually been like 1 or 2 out with the majority, barring Birmingham, who I got horribly wrong. But pleasing so far. Up in 18th, I had Cardiff. Now, another team that survived, but by the skin of their teeth. They actually finished 3 places below where I predicted them. They ended up finishing the season in 21st. I think Cardiff could have a job on their hands next season. What I saw of them this campaign, they weren't good enough. I think, they would have gone down if it wasn't for Reading's points deduction. And you just feel like they need to have a really good summer to just reaffirm their security in this division, because for so much of this season they were off the pace. Cardiff survived by the skin of their teeth. I did have them up, but I was 3 places out. Now, the next couple of teams, boy, did I get wrong. I had Sunderland to finish in 17th. And I had Blackburn to finish in 16th. Now, Sunderland ended up finishing 11 places higher in 6th. Now, I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 17th of May, the day after Sunderland have just been knocked out of the playoffs by Luton. But a remarkable season for Sunderland under Tony Mowbray. I mean, finished in the playoffs in League One the season before. I thought they'd have enough quality to stay in the division, but I certainly didn't see them being above mid-table. They ended up finishing in the playoffs with a 3-0 victory on the final day against Preston. Some really impressive loan business done. I think that's key to not only championship teams that have come up, but championship teams that have come down from the Premier League the season before. So really shrewd business. It seems like stability off the pitch has calmed down somewhat from the infamous documentary that we saw a few years ago. Fair play to Sunderland and fair play to Blackburn as well. I know they ended up finishing the season in 7th on goal difference. It was a bitterly disappointing finish to the season for them. They really kind of tailed off after a brilliant start. They were always firing slightly hot on the numbers, and it did feel like they would tail off at some point. But I think most people had them kind of mid-table, lower mid-table. To have such a relentless, consistent push for the playoffs is really impressive and something they can build on. Now, this kind of pack of 3 or 4 above is always really difficult to call. Equally, you've got sides in there that you just have a feeling for, a sense. Not really for any real logic, but it's just where you feel like they'll finish. So in 15th, I had Stoke. 14th, I had Preston. And 13th, I had Bristol City. Stoke ended up finishing 16th. Preston ended up finishing 12th and Bristol City ended up finishing 14th. So I was only a maximum of 2 places out on all of those. Now, the team that impressed me most out of them were probably Preston. I thought they a balance about the squad. They were remarkable when they came to Carrow Road and took a result from our place, and that really derailed our season, really. And equally in Bristol City, who created loads, looked frightening going forwards, had some really exciting young players in their side. So although they kind of finished mid-pack, it was a really pleasing campaign for them. Now, if you would have looked at the midway stage of the championship, you would have thought I'd have got this next one wildly wrong. And I did end up getting it wildly wrong, just the other way around from what we all expected. I had QPR as a nailed-on mid-table side. I had them down as 12th in my predictions. They ended up finishing 20th. For a large part of the season, they were up near the top, and then they went on just the worst run. Ended the season with Gareth Ainsworth in charge. Probably thankful that they survived in the championship in the end. Had a couple of wins in their last 5 games. But my goodness, what a topsy-turvy season it was for QPR. It feels like they just need to find some cohesion and some stability over this summer. They've got some real quality in that side. But to go from as hot as they were to as cold as they were was really concerning. And they'll just want to be finding some consistency next season. Got that one seriously wrong. Fairly pleased with my prediction of Swansea. I had them down to finish 11th. They ended up finishing 10th. Really liked what I saw from Russell Martin's side towards the back end of that season. I think he had a period of that season where fans were maybe starting to turn on him. It didn't feel like he had the support of the board. But we know that Russell Martin has a really clever footballing mind, and we started to see that with his Swansea side. They came to Carrow Road, played us off the park. Just a really nice footballing side to watch. And I think if he had the backing of the boards, a couple more transfers in there, they could really make a push for the playoffs next season. Ended up falling just short. They were 3 points shy of the playoffs. It could have easily been done if he hadn't have been hampered with injuries and such throughout the season. But Swansea onto a good thing, I think, with Russell Martin. If he stays there, well done to them. Now, I had Hull down for finishing 10th. I think going into this predictions video, this was one of the hardest teams to predict. There was so much going on at Hull. I just kind of put them in 10th as a bit of a safety bet. They ended up finishing 15th. Like QPR, kind of. They were hot and cold. You couldn't really understand what Hull side you were going to get. 5 places out in the end on my prediction. Not too bad. Now, I think one of my teams of the season have been Coventry. I had them down to finish 9th this season. I thought they'd have a good season. I think most Coventry fans would have probably taken 9th after their start to the campaign. If you cast your minds back right to the start of the season, they came to Carrow Road, they lost 3-0, 3-1, looked awful, had loads of uncertainty around their stadium, and ended the season finishing 5th into the playoffs. And I'm recording before their second leg of the playoffs, but potentially Premier League football next season. Even if they weren't to get it, the fact that they got into that top 6 was remarkable. Mark Robins has done a fantastic job. He's being rewarded with a new contract. They had really exciting players. Gustavo Hamer, Guy Carrez. Just looked at that team and such quality, clever recruitment, well-drilled sides, solid championship outfit. I'd say out of all of the teams I predicted going into this season, that's the one I feel like I got the kind of most wrong, I'd say. Saw them having a good season, but I would have said 9th was absolute max of their ability. They ended up pushing on a really strong end to the season. Brilliant work from Coventry. Now, the only prediction I got right this season was Millwall in 8th. Now, if you would have kind of filmed this probably 4 weeks before the end of the season, you would have had Millwall down as finishing top 6. They were a nightmare to play against, particularly at the Den. They set up deep, they pinged long balls up forwards, and they were just really tough to beat. And I think that's what they did so well. They didn't concede too many goals, and their home record was so strong. I just had them falling short of the playoffs, and in the end, that's what happened. I still think it was a great season for Millwall to finish 8th, and I think there's something to build on. They're always there or thereabouts, aren't they, in this division? You know what to expect from Millwall, and we got exactly that. I would have said probably should have got playoffs in the end, fell just short, but got my prediction right. I had West Brom in 7th. They ended up finishing 9th. I thought West Brom would fall just short of the playoffs. They did. Again, it feels like, along with, the likes of Stoke and probably Watford, a team that not so long ago were in the Premier League, just struggling to find their identity a little bit. And I think, we'll get onto them in a minute, but I think we've got that problem with Norwich. I wouldn't be surprised if, when I do this video in a couple of months looking ahead to next season, I've probably got West Brom to finish in the top 6. I think they've got something building at the Hawthorns. It feels like there was an element of consistency towards the back end of the season. They looked really good when we played them at the Hawthorns. Fell just short. 9th place, something to build on. Luton Town. Now, I think this was probably one of my more audacious predictions going into this season. I remember plenty of people saying, Jack, Luton are never finishing 6th. And they didn't. They finished 3rd. I thought they would get in the playoffs. They did get in the playoffs. 80 points on the board, which was a remarkable campaign. And I think the joy of Luton is they've been on this journey and the potential of Premier League football awaits. They've kept their roots. They know their style. They know what they're about. They're well drilled. And look, if you look through that Luton squad, it's difficult to kind of pick out a player that's mightily impressive. But they all know their roles. Rob Edwards did a brilliant job coming in there, and I think we've seen that with Luton in previous campaigns where managers have left and others have come in and picked up the pieces and gone again. I really like what Luton are about, and I think they're a credit to the EFL and potentially the Premier League next season. They've gone about business in the right way. Carlton Morris just epitomised what they were about and led the line so well. Look, I'm pleased that this prediction came off and ended up doing better than I thought. Well done to Luton. It was a brilliant campaign. In 5th place, I had it down as Sheffield United. I thought they'd build on last season, and boy, did they. Went up automatically in the end in 2nd place. Remember when we were playing them at Bramall Lane, I think it was us in up there. We should have beaten them. We had a last-minute penalty, and it felt at that stage like Norwich were actually really close to the level of Sheffield United. In the end, we were miles apart. But again, it wasn't the best Championship campaign. I don't think Sheffield United were the best team we've ever seen. But they just did enough. They had quality. They've managed to retain some of those players that played for them in the Premier League, and kind of just built on that and managed to get it done. Ended up finishing 11 points clear of Luton, and they were 11 points or 10 points shy of Burnley, so there was a big gap in between those. Thought they'd do well, did even better. Now in fourth place I had it down as Burnley, and wow, I was wrong on this one. Burnley cantered to the division, 101 points. Wow, what a side Burnley were. One of the best we've seen in the Championship over the last decade. Probably add Norwich to that list, not being biased, maybe like a Newcastle. They were magnificent. And I spoke about it earlier, but their loan business in particular was so strong and so exciting. And I think when we were previewing this season, Burnley were one of those where you went, this could either be promotion or this could be relegation. Like, there's no in between. We didn't really know what Vincent Kompany was about. We didn't really know a lot of the players they were bringing in, and actually everything just clicked. Rare to see a team get 100 points in the division. It shows their dominance. That I was the most impressed out of any team that played Norwich. I watched them and they were consistently really exciting. They scored late goals. They just had one of those seasons where everything goes right. It will be fascinating to see how they fare in the Premier League, whether they keep their identity, whether they switch things up. I think the one thing we really found out this season is that Vincent Kompany is a top draw manager, and I suspect will go to the very top of the game. I kind of put Burnley in fourth because I didn't think they'd have the consistency. I wasn't sure about Kompany. I wasn't sure about the signings, but it did feel like there was enough quality in there. Look, I got it wrong. They ended up going up automatically and without really much challenge. So good luck to Burnley in the Premier League next season. Boy, oh boy, did I get the next one wrong. I had Watford to finish third. They ended up finishing the season in 11th, and Watford just did a Watford this season. There was so much drama off the pitch. They went through managers like there's no tomorrow. Much like when we spoke about Wigan earlier on in this, like so many different managers coming in, and you will get a bounce, but it's just simply not consistent over the course of the season. They were playing different styles. Players were coming and going. Look, I thought Watford had the quality. They still had Sarr. They still had Pedro. You look at that and go, that should be enough to really mount a charge in the Championship. But that's the Championship, isn't it? You will always get a Luton or a Coventry finishing up there that don't have the quality, but have that degree of coaching prowess that the other teams don't. Watford struggled. I think they've got another difficult season ahead next year when players start to leave. Got that one very wrong. Now, I had Middlesbrough to finish second, and I liked the makeup of the squad, and in the end, Middlesbrough finished fourth, so I was a couple of positions out on this one. But they got there, and they got there playing some beautiful football. Chuba Akpom, Cameron Archer, they had goals going forwards, and I mean, they were the Paul Lambert equivalent, the Paul Lambert Norwich equivalent in the Championship this season. If they scored, if your opposition scored 4, they'd score 5. They were frightening going forwards. And I think probably the favourites to go up via the playoffs. Middlesbrough know what the Championship's about. They did things the right way this campaign. Clever in the loan market, like we've said with a lot of these clubs. Got it right. Well done to Middlesbrough. I predicted Norwich City to win the league. We ended up finishing 13th, as you all know. And look, I don't regret saying that Norwich would win the league. Plenty of other far shrewder judges than myself predicted the same thing. And it just shows the complete failure from top to bottom of Norwich City this season. We retained a lot of talent. We had a manager in Dean Smith that I thought knew how to get promoted from the Championship. That went completely wrong. We brought in Wagner. Things looked up for a little bit and then tailed off quite quickly. I think what we learned was that the bouncing between divisions isn't a consistent method of trying to operate a football club. Like, you will get found out eventually and your time will be up. And I think we found that out this season. We had a lot of players on the books that actually probably in hindsight we should have let go of. And I think that's probably the joy of letting Pookie go now, not holding on too long. Players that have been here before, done it maybe a couple of times in promotion and just didn't have the get up and go to go again. Players like Nunez, I thought were going to hit the ground running a little bit more. I thought, some of the likes of Christos Jolis might make an impact. Didn't end up happening. Look, we've spoken about it a lot, and we know the failure that Norwich City had. I still think that I had my reasons to think that we'd win the division this season. And it was also down to the fact that I thought the division was really weak. I didn't think Burnley would do as well as they did. To be fair, I got the majority of the other teams up there bang on. And it was a weak division. That was the other frustration for Norwich. The division was the weakest I can remember, but certainly in the last decade. And that will really frustrate people. So actually, Norwich were my worst prediction this season. I was 12 places out with Norwich. I was 11 places out with Sunderland. And I was 8 places out with Watford. Barring that, not actually too bad. So I'll take it. There we go. How did you get on with your pre-season predictions if you did one? What was your biggest surprise of the season? I think barring Norwich, who just completely let me down, I think my biggest success story of this season was probably Coventry. They did a remarkable job. Well done to Luton as well. And a big well done to Birmingham, who I thought would go down and ended up surviving. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've all had a giggle at my expense at some of my failures of predicting sides in the Championship this season. I've thoroughly enjoyed the Championship campaign, despite Norwich having such a flop of a season. It's always difficult to predict. It's always topsy-turvy, and that's why we love it. Plenty more videos to come this summer, so if you haven't already subscribed, why not click that button to subscribe to TNC. I will be back very soon for another video, but until then, stay safe, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.